Facehuggers, xenomorphs, pulse rifles, and paralyzing terror. Alien Romulus has all the DNA of the best films in the Alien franchise. But will it be enough? We think so. Here's why. When the teaser trailer for Alien Romulus debuted in March 2024, fans were almost immediately sold on the new vision for the franchise. This region of space showed no signs of bumbling biologists, WWE brawls with predators, or flutes. No, in this teaser, it's just the claustrophobia of deep space, swarms of creatures that only want to latch onto your face and lay eggs in you, and a hostile environment where your only salvation is a relentless instinct for survival, and maybe a pulse rifle or two. In other words, a lot of the elements that made fans fall in love with the franchise in the first place. Several brief moments also emphasized the scale and majesty of the spacecraft of the Alien universe. But that still takes a respectful backseat to the trailer's patient, steady unraveling of the horror that awaits this crew. Given that the teaser is less than a minute long, and yet still managed to have viewers squirming at home, it's a promising glimpse of what may be a turning point for the franchise. The full-length trailer released on June 4th doubled down on all of that, with more nail-biting glimpses of the Xenomorph, more facehuggers, and more cosmic carnage. Following the show-don't-tell approach of the teaser, it's everything a trailer should be, essentially 2 minutes steeped in dread, without revealing much about the plot. Let's face it, Alien has had a rocky road over the last 3 or so decades. While Alien Resurrection has its defenders, the 1997 sequel was arguably the boot that kicked the Alien franchise out of the airlock of integrity. It led to a clear turning point for the franchise, and not in a good way. Dark Horse Comics had already experimented with Alien crossovers, with Alien vs. Predator, and Superman vs. Aliens. But starting around 1997, xenomorphs were shoehorned into every bankable intellectual property, ranging from Batman and Green Lantern to Judge Dredd and Image Comics' Wildcats. Not that all of those stories were bad, but they did start to erode the xenomorph mythos into Monster of the Week territory far removed from their inception as eldritch deep space horrors. Also during this period, original Alien director Ridley Scott and Aliens writer-director James Cameron were actively developing a serious sequel to Resurrection, but Cameron abandoned the project when he learned Fox was simultaneously working with Paul W.S. Anderson on an adaptation of another crossover comic, Alien vs. Predator. The rest, as they say, is history. As Cameron claims he predicted before AVP or its sequel were released, Alien had effectively lost credibility as a narrative franchise. When Scott returned to execute the prequel concept he had begun developing with Cameron in the 90s, it was something of an event. Finally, Alien would be Alien again. Unfortunately for a wide swath of moviegoers, 2012's Prometheus and 2017's Alien Covenant were disappointments, with Prometheus in particular regarded as intermittently interesting, but woefully and perhaps superficially philosophical.
Must feel like your God abandoned you.
What?
Reportedly taking place between the first two films, Romulus has a unique chance to return Alien to its roots of subtle world-building and good old-fashioned horror. The Xenomorph saga may have seemed like a universe in perpetual decline for some fans, but it may yet be revived as a prominent modern science fiction franchise. So far, the main Alien films have never had a director who didn't know their stuff. You've got Scott and Cameron, obviously, and then there's David Fincher and Jean-Pierre Jeunet, who helmed 3 and Resurrection, respectively. And along with its chronological departure from recent entries in the franchise, Alien Romulus also has a brand new writer-director to lead the newest Alien endeavor, and it's someone who has been making a case for himself as a defining voice in modern horror. Romulus is directed by Fede Alvarez, from a script he penned with his longtime writing partner, Rodo Seagues. The pair made their feature debut in a fairly audacious way with 2013's Evil Dead, a soft reboot/sequel to Sam Raimi's beloved franchise. The resulting film polarized critics when it first premiered, but in years since, it has amassed something of a cult following that agrees that it is, in fact, groovy. Then they turned around and gave us the riveting sleeper hit, Don't Breathe, and its sequel. Based on their filmography alone, Alvarez and Seagues seem like the perfect choice to return a lost franchise like Alien to its roots. Factor in their professed love for the franchise, and it sounds like the movie is in the best possible hands. Ridley Scott and James Cameron are the defining creators within the Alien franchise. It's comforting to know then that Alvarez gave both men access to various cuts of his film and incorporated notes from them both. Cameron had previously provided feedback on the script, and when he finally got to watch the film, Alvarez told The Hollywood Reporter that he loved it. Scott, on the other hand, was probably the more daunting critic for Alvarez, both because he serves as an executive producer on Romulus, and because he's notoriously blunt about his opinions on films, especially those based on his own work. Alvarez insisted that Scott be shown Romulus first and be given an in-person meeting with Alvarez himself to voice whatever concerns he might have. When the meeting finally took place, well, it went better than Alvarez could have hoped.
He walks into the room and he did say, Fede, what can I say, is great.
Those are two massive endorsements for the film, to say the least. Originally, Romulus was slated to get a streaming release, which would have been a disappointment to a lot of fans, but wasn't particularly shocking. Disney and 20th Century Studios' Hulu-aimed horror reboots have done surprisingly well critically. Dan Trachtenberg's 2022 Predator prequel, Prey, was lauded by critics and audiences alike, while David Bruckner's Hellraiser drew a fairly warm reception as well. But then, seemingly out of nowhere, Romulus got bumped to a theatrical release. Fede Alvarez told The Hollywood Reporter that the studio suddenly decided to fully commit to Alien Romulus as a theatrical release as soon as production started in March 2023, saying, "Right when we started shooting it, the studio was like, fit, we're going into theaters with this." While it may have been a stronger display of confidence if Disney made this decision after test screenings of Romulus, the studio already had access to the script and had an idea of what the film would be, and giving Alvarez an immediate upgrade allowed him to actually make the film with a theatrical release in mind. The original Alien helped launch the career of sci-fi queen Sigourney Weaver. Now, Alien Romulus could do the exact same thing for a relatively new and exciting talent, Golden Globe nominee Kaylee Spaney. In 2023, Spaney led Sofia Coppola's buzzy drama, Priscilla, playing the ex-wife of music legend Elvis Presley, opposite Euphoria breakout Jacob Elordi. Spaney's performance specifically was characterized as captivating, subtle, and star-making. At the 81st Golden Globe Awards in 2024, Spaney was nominated for Best Actress in a Motion Picture. Spaney followed up Priscilla with Alex Garland's politically charged box office smash, Civil War, in which she joined a daunting ensemble that included Kirsten Dunst, Stephen McKinley Henderson, and Nick Offerman. Spaney's talent and clear dedication to the craft explain why her star is quickly rising in Hollywood, and hopefully Romulus cements her as a bona fide top-billed actor. Spaney headlines a surprisingly young cast in Romulus. It's definitely a departure, since past films are largely adult-oriented movies that center on experts in their fields, like space marines and scientists and biologists, who are really good at their jobs.
Hey, baby.
You're strong?
The idea to have a younger cast in Romulus actually began with a deleted scene from Aliens. Alvarez told The Hollywood Reporter, "I remember watching an extended cut of Aliens, and there's a moment where you see a bunch of kids running around the corridors of this colony, and I thought, wow, what would it be like for those kids to grow up in a colony that still needs another 50 years to terraform?"
Your kids know you're not supposed to be on this level. Go on, get out of here.
That's probably merely the skeleton of the plot, but it inspired the writer-director to give Romulus a distinctly youthful point of view. He further told Entertainment Weekly that focusing on characters who weren't exactly experts made for a more humanizing story. He said, "I like this concept of putting people in the front seat of the story, who are closer to what the audience is. Not that the audience is young, more that the audience is completely virgin to the realities of space." Granted, focusing on a younger cast isn't a draw for everyone, but Alvarez has a knack for making films that feature adolescent characters without being thematically adolescent. Hopefully, the decision goes deeper than a financial desire to bring the franchise to a new generation. If done right, it could lead to unconventional scenarios and plot solutions for a fresher story that will feel unlike anything audiences have seen from the franchise yet. A lack of experts on screen in no way translates to the same thing behind the scenes. According to Spaney, Disney and 20th Century Studios brought back some of the design team from Cameron's Aliens to work on Alien Romulus. She explained, "The same people who built those xenomorphs actually came on and built ours. So getting to see the original design with the original people who have been working on these films for 45 plus years and has been so much of their life has been really incredible. Talking to The Hollywood Reporter, Alvarez reiterated that their approach centered around capturing as much on camera as possible. He said, "For the sets, we built spaceships and we built miniatures. We went back to all of that, and then we figured out ways to marry it with the CG world. There's some things that only CG can do for the scope and movement, so it really has to be the right tool for the shot." In the past, Alvarez has been open about his distaste for going too CGI heavy in films, preferring practical effects and props whenever possible.
And they look weird behind the scene, but then in camera they look amazing, and that's what it matters.
Obviously, there are still going to be plenty of digital effects in Romulus, but whether he's bringing back veteran effects wizards or showcasing real-life facehugger props used in the film, it's clear that Romulus will stay very much in line with the tone and style of the films that launched the franchise.